for being here on the Friday before a holiday weekend. Kudos to everyone for showing up to work today. Hopefully everyone will also show back up the day after the 4th of July weekend. So my name is Lauren Turner. I am a client relations role over at the Nebraska Safety Council. For those of you that maybe aren't very familiar with the Nebraska Safety Council, we are a local nonprofit organization. We've actually been around since 1961, and we focus solely on the state of Nebraska. Our mission is to provide leadership and resources to workplaces and communities across our state to make sure that people are leading healthy and safe lives. So we have a few primary focuses within our organization. We have workplace safety. So that will really dig into OSHA, construction standards, things like that. We could do a lot of safety training across the state with different manufacturing companies, construction companies, and things like that. We also have our Work Well segment as well, and they really focus on health and well-being, providing coaching services and other health and well-being services for all sorts of different sizes of companies. And then we also, of course, do driving safety. So we, of course, do tons of driver's ed. That is in full swing right now over the summer. We also have defensive driving courses, motorcycle beginner courses, as well as advanced refresher courses for more experienced riders. And then, of course, we also take care of some of those folks that get tickets. Yep, quick warning for the weekend. Please, hopefully you will not have to come and take one of those classes with us. We prefer the other stuff. So really fast, I just wanted to make sure you knew a little bit more about our organization. Again, if you ever come into something in the future where you would love to have a resource or have questions, don't hesitate. Carly has my information. We're really here to try and make sure that we're just offering some of that guidance and support. So that's what we're here for. Since we are just getting into the holiday weekend, I really did want to focus this presentation a little bit more into what you guys are probably going to be encountering and thinking about over the next couple of days. I'm not going to jump in and start talking about a lot of standards from OSHA or anything else like that. I want this to be applicable stuff that you guys can take home and apply. You can talk about with your friends and your families over the next couple of days and just kind of get in that mindset, because I know a lot of us are probably thinking about a lot of the fun things we're going to be doing. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're kind of taking care of some of those things that maybe slip our mind sometimes. So real fast today, I'm going to go over some basic things. We have, of course, one of the most primary ones that people think about in the summer is staying hydrated. We'll go over some basic symptoms and signs of heat stress, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. We'll also talk a little bit about sun exposure, pet safety, and then traveling and planning in community. So first and foremost, a lot of the times when it comes to hydration in the summer, you just really kind of hear, stay hydrated. And of course, I'm even just looking across right now, everyone has brought in a cup. I've seen a lot of great people making a choice of water and other beverages. And so obviously you guys know some of those basics. I don't need to tell you guys how to, choose smart drinks. I'm sure a lot of you guys also know about, checking your labels on your drinks. Are you, how many calories, how much sugar are you ingesting with your drinks and things like that. So of course, I'm first and foremost just going to say, make sure you're checking your labels. But more importantly, a lot of people sometimes will also start to get into a couple of other debates. It's not just what's on the label, but what effect is this drink going to have on me? So who in here is a coffee drinker and needs that cup of joe to get started in the morning, or maybe really enjoys taking a little extra jolt of coffee before you maybe go out and exercise, whether it's a run or a bike ride? Coffee drinkers in here? Yes? Okay. So I'm sure at some point you've probably also heard that you need to be aware of your caffeine consumption, because sometimes that can have a diuretic effect and, of course, increase your risk for dehydration. It's actually a pretty interesting topic because when it comes to diuretics, you actually look at the definition of a diuretic. A diuretic is just something that causes you to need to urinate, so even water could technically be considered a diuretic. When you go into the research and your average cup of coffee, there is actually not going to be such an effect that you are at an increased risk for dehydration. So go ahead, enjoy your cup of coffee. Obviously don't overdo it, but hello. How's it? Good, how are you doing?
Sorry, I'm
Old
late.
friend. Fun to have a familiar face. So, again, with that warning with caffeine, be aware of how much you're drinking, but at the same time, you can enjoy that cup of joe. You don't have to forego that little extra jolt that you might need to get you started in the morning. Of course, another one coming up this weekend is going to be alcohol. That is also another known diuretic as well. So with that, I think I can just simply say with this audience, drink responsibly. Do the swap thing where you maybe enjoy an alcoholic beverage and then swap it in with water. Be smart, be wise, and also, of course, be very careful with any of those holiday fun punches where you don't know what you're drinking. If there is one weekend where I know that these are really common, we all love to play mixologists and have some of that fun, but really do compare to maybe just grabbing a can of beer from a cooler if that's your choice of beverage. I will say, just again, be very cautious in drinking that, whatever punch you might be able to get. Just make sure you have some water afterwards. Be cautious and don't, take solo cup after solo cup of those with you. You never really know what's going to be in there, and especially with the heat and what you may or may not be eating throughout the day and what other activities you're partaking in. You really don't know how that can hit you, so I just want to make sure we kind of just caution everyone to be very careful of those. Finally, another thing that sometimes I think people tend to possibly look over are medications that you can be taking. So one thing with medications is if you're maybe a person who is really working hard on staying hydrated, maybe you're out jogging and training for a marathon, again, maybe even just out running with the kids, going to the park, grilling, standing on your feet, and you're drinking a lot of water, make sure that you're not almost going to the point where you're overhydrating and could potentially be flushing the effects of your medication out. So if you are someone that is taking medication, I would always say first and foremost, either check in with a pharmacist or also your physician and just say, hey, is there anything that I need to be aware of? Who's traveling this weekend? Is anyone going in the car? Maybe going to be spending some time outside? Another thing to be aware of, if you are traveling, some medications are not meant to be stored at higher temperatures. So if you are stashing that medication maybe somewhere in your car or while you're camping, or even if it's just a day trip up to the Omaha Zoo and you're leaving that in your car can get extremely hot, as we all know, and we'll talk about a little bit later on. So be very careful. That high heat temperature can cause problems, and then I don't want to say problems, but can possibly affect the medications if you choose to store in a high temperature area. So again, check with a pharmacist and check with your doctor and just say, hey, am I at any additional risk? Is there anything else I need to be extra careful of? That could even be something as simple as sun exposure. Again, we'll talk about this a little bit more. But there are medications out there that can make your skin more sensitive to the sun. So you being out for an hour versus another person being out for the hour, you could have very different effects on your skin. So again, I'm always just going to go back and follow the default, check with your doctor, but do be aware that there are a couple of different things that can affect your medications. So heat-related illnesses. This is going to be a really big one, I think just over the weekend, because a lot of us maybe are used to being able to hop outside for a little bit and then come back into the indoor AC. You're working in and out. With the holiday weekend, we're probably going to be outdoors for prolonged periods of time beyond what you're normally used to. This could even be maybe something to keep in mind for weekends coming up if you're going to, weddings or, outdoor weddings, long days out of the park, family picnics and family get-togethers. You're not just popping right back inside, you're probably going to be outside for a lot. So it is going to be important to keep an eye out for some of the signs and symptoms of heat-related illnesses. So before we even get into these, one thing to note that there is such a thing as heat cramps. And those are actually going to be an isolated and specific muscle pain. Usually just comes from overexertion of working out outside. So whether you're maybe out gardening, digging a little bit too hard, maybe you're helping out mowing the lawn and that's not your usual thing. Get a little extra strain from doing that. You're just going to feel some really painful muscle spasms when you get those heat cramps, and it's going to be very intense, very prolonged. It's not just going to be your normal muscle cramp. So once that happens, of course, immediately just back off from the activity you're partaking in. Go get yourself in a cool environment, hydrate, relax, a little bit of massage, a little bit of comfortable stretching where applicable, and again, get some assistance or help finishing that activity if it needs to be done, but just something to be aware of with those cramps. It's going to be a little bit more above and beyond a normal muscle cramp for you. From there, you can get into heat stress. So heat stress is really just going to be where your body is really overheated. You're going to be experiencing really heavy sweating. And the thing that I think will really identify this for you as well is going to be a very rapid pulse. So if you're starting to feel a lot of these things, you really are going to want to say, okay, I've overexerted myself, I've overdone this, I'm not feeling good. Maybe you're even just feeling just a little shaky, things like that. Maybe you're feeling just slightly lightheaded. If you start to feel some of those signs and symptoms coming on, recognize that early on. Do not push yourself. This is not the time to be doing that when we have hot summer temperatures and high humidity here in Nebraska coming up. So make sure that you, again, back off from the activity, hydrate, get into a cool area, whether it's some shade. If you're not able to get into an air-conditioned environment, maybe you can pop into your car and get the AC rolling for a little bit if you really need that, and you're not close to a house or another place where you can get some of that AC. But again, it's important to start to recognize some of those beginning signs right when you're in that the heat stress stage, because as you continue to escalate through your remaining stages, the damage that can come from some of these other stages, specifically heat stroke, is going to require medical treatment. So it's better to catch it early and back down. And has anyone here maybe ever pushed it a little bit too far outside? Again, whether it's chores on the weekend, running, bicycling, anything like that. I can actually share a story of my own. I remember my dad and I are avid bicycle riders. We love going out on bike rides any time of the year, and we were out and about on a bike ride together. Nothing too crazy. We had just been coming back from downtown, riding actually down through here. My parents live not too far from here. And my dad, who does have some blood pressure concerns, really started to feel dizzy, not himself. And it's the first time on a bike ride together that I definitely became a little bit concerned. So immediately we stopped. I said, do we need to go and get into the air conditioning? We were over by Target. I said, do we need to get into the air conditioned area? I got him some water. We stopped. He just kind of sat down, took a couple minutes, and we were able to get back going in a little bit. But the important thing that really stood out to me is that, ego aside, my dad was able to say, I am not feeling good, and there's no problem with me saying, I need to stop, I need to sit down, yes, I need some water, I might need you to actually go get the car and come and pick me and the bike up. And I was there to be able to assist with all of that. So for me, again, put that ego aside. I know we all want to push through, we all want to be athletes, but sometimes it really is okay to back down a little bit. So that's a personal story from mine that I know I was able to work with my father on. So what we were able to avoid, my dad going into, is getting into the further signs and getting escalated all the way up into heat stroke. So heat stroke is kind of the one where you really want to be careful. Your body can become extremely overheated. We're not talking a little bit, we're talking 104 degrees or higher. So we know when someone is getting really sick, let's say a really bad flu, and some of those signs and symptoms aren't being abated, and they get a really high temperature. If you had 104 degree temperature, you'd probably be getting, whether it's your kid or your spouse or anyone else, over to seek medical treatment, right? Well, the same thing can happen here in this case, where you can get your body heat so high that you are going to need to seek medical treatment. And of course, if this remains untreated, where that body temperature would remain at 104 degrees or higher for an extended period of time, that can cause permanent brain damage, it can cause stroke, and in some cases it has caused death. Again, it's really important to just remember to recognize the symptoms. So remember we were talking about, at first you can maybe have some very heavy sweating, right? Very heavy sweating, maybe feeling a little dizzy, really getting that rapid pulse going, maybe feeling a little shaky, that type of things. When you get into the heat stroke scenarios, you're going to maybe not only getting a little dizzy, you're going to be very dizzy. You're going to be extremely lightheaded. They might even already have a headache coming on. A really big symptom that's going to be standing out, though, you're not going to be heavily sweating. In fact, it's going to be weird. You will not be sweating. You're going to have really red, hot, and dry skin. So it's almost kind of like that sweat is when your body's trying to help you cool down. And when you get to heat stroke, that's already shut down. You have dry skin. So that's going to be kind of that opposite to pay attention to. You're also going to probably have some things where you're going to hear really shallow breathing. Again, you're going to have that really rapid pulse. And then, of course, you're also maybe going to start to see some mental signs where they might be a little confused. So again, if you're at a family picnic, I use the example of my dad. My dad kind of stopped himself in a little bit. If my dad had kept going, maybe at some point his speech might have gotten a little bit off. Maybe he would have turned down, one down a lane when home is this way. If you start to see someone maybe getting a little confused and things like that, that's going to be a really big sign that they might be experiencing heat stroke. At the end of the day, with all of these, you're going to want to make sure that you get this person into a cool environment as soon as possible. In addition to trying to help them sip some water, you are going to want to get some water on a cold cloth, or even just get them, pour water on them. It doesn't need to, we're not talking after the football game with the ice cooler, by the way. We don't want to do that to them. But making sure that you get some cold cloths on, onto their forehead, onto their body. If you're able to somehow get them in front of a fan and help them cool down a little bit. And again, if they really have some of those heat stroke signs and symptoms, you need to seek medical treatment and get them some assistance. So if that's something where you're able to get them into an emergency room or call 911, that's going to be a scenario with that heat stroke where that has escalated to a point where that's going to be beyond being able to, take care of that yourself at home. That's going to be something where you need medical assistance. So that can be a little scary. Bottom line with some of this, though, is going to be, again, recognize it early so you never get to that extreme point. Train smart, work smart over the summer. For example, you don't need to be mowing the lawn at noon. If you have a huge acreage that you're mowing it and you're mowing it in the middle of the afternoon, do it early in the morning. You can come back in and take a nap if it's on a Saturday. Or also maybe try and figure out some times where you can do some late evening activities as well. But just train smart for whatever sporting events you have and other things you'll have coming up over the summer months here still. So sun exposure is a pretty fun one. A lot of these, I'm sure when you first look at some of these bullet points, you're going to say, this is very common sense. And you know what? It really, some of it really is. But the thing is that when it's a common sense item, you could be so focused on a couple of other things that by the time you actually get to this, it's easy to forget. How many times have you maybe thought to head out to the pool and you're grabbing your swim towels, you're maybe wrangling a couple of kids, trying to get everyone in the swimsuit, getting everyone into the car, making sure you have your snacks, making sure you have this, and then you get to the pool and you forgot your sunscreen. Or the sunscreen was in the bag, but it wasn't even, it was already empty from a previous trip. So some of these are common sense things, but there are going to be a couple just to make sure, to add to your checklist. And here's a couple of important reasons why we want to make sure these things are covered. So I'm assuming everyone in here has sunglasses. Yes, everyone probably has sunglasses, right? So how many of you know if your sunglasses are 100% rated against both UVA and UVB rays? Okay, we've got a couple of people who know how to check some of that. So that's one thing, right? I was like, I'm a huge fan of going out and getting a cute pair of sunglasses, especially if they're on sale. But the most important thing is to make sure that you're actually getting ones that are going to be rated against both UVA and UVB rays to protect your eyes. Even if they're really dark, you say, oh, they're so dark I can barely see through them, or they're mirrored, that's just fine. Always make sure to double check if they're going to be protecting your eyes. So as you're maybe going and picking up a spare pair this weekend, or grabbing some extra ones for someone in the family who doesn't have them yet, it's something to keep in mind. Another thing that comes with sunglasses are sunglasses for kids. It's a really interesting fact, but 73% of adults will make sure that they're wearing their sunglasses, but only 58% are making sure that their kids are also wearing them. So again, this is a really kid-friendly weekend where a lot of families are going to be out and about. Make sure to help keep an eye on everyone and trying to make sure that they're getting some sun protection. I know sunglasses necessarily don't always work on kids of certain ages. So try and arm them with some extra protection where you can, whether it's a baseball cap or just mitigating some of that outdoor activity and going from there. Also, when it comes to sunscreen or sunblock, would most of you here consider sunscreen and sunblock the same thing? Possibly, yeah, probably. I was like, hey, they're interchangeably used most of the time. There actually are two different types of sun protection. Sunscreen and sunblock you can technically consider to be different. So sunblock is actually going to be creating a physical barrier on your skin. Sunscreen is actually going to be chemicals that are going to be absorbed onto your skin, and they're both going to be addressing different rays. They're going to be addressing either UVA or UVB rays. So when you're going out and maybe grabbing, again, that extra thing of sunscreen so you have it on hand this weekend, go ahead and start to try and look for some of those broad spectrum sunscreens and sunblocks that are going to be able to really help you out and make sure that you're addressing both of those rays equally, not just one or the other. And also, I know it's really easy too. My parents kind of did this with us, raising us up. I grew up thinking SPF 15 was like medium for like spring, right? Or maybe I'm just going out for an hour, and then SPF 30 or 40 was like, oh, I'll probably be out for half the day, and I really needed like SPF 50 if I was going to be out like all day long. The SPF rating, that's not how that works. So, you know, getting a 100% SPF isn't necessarily making sure that you're completely protected from the sun. So again, make sure that you're looking for broad spectrum defenses. It's becoming more and more common to be able to get these accessible on the market. It's really, again, just going back about check the labels. You know, make sure you're just giving it an extra quick glance before you feel like you're sure that you've got the right stuff for you. Other than that, I would also just make a quick reminder when it comes to sunscreen, especially again for little kids. If they have some nice braids done or anything like that, or if you have your hair parted, there have been multiple times, I'm sure some of us experienced it, where you have burned your scalp, maybe you burned the tip of your ears or just right there on the back of your neck. My poor brother used to love to buzz cut his hair during the summer, and man, did he get some really bad sunburns on his scalp. So make sure, you know, if you have that, either, you know, try and style the hair a little bit differently, or make sure that you're grabbing some scarves or some baseball caps to help protect that. That's one that will really kind of get you on a day out at the zoo. Of course, smart clothing choices. I would definitely love to kind of hear from you guys. Again, I think a lot of this is common sense, but it's really just kind of talking through some of it and refreshing our memories. What do you guys kind of think when you think of ways to dress smart for the summer? What first comes to mind as what you should or maybe should not wear?
Light colored clothes.
Absolutely, yep. Going for lighter colored clothes. Not as easy to wash sometimes if you get them dirty, especially with the kids, but those definitely will make a big difference. Anything else?
I think just for the kids, like, they love to wear tank tops, but just have their shoulders covered. Because I think sometimes even just that little bit extra on their shoulders, that seems to be the place that they like to burn. So,
Absolutely.
sleeves versus.
Just choosing to go with sleeves, especially if you're going to be out for a longer period over the day or over the hot afternoon hours, having those shoulders covered could save your kids from a sunburn without having to worry about reapplying some of that sunscreen. Or maybe they've already been out for an hour, being able to toss that t-shirt on after a while could also really save a little bit of that sun exposure. What else might come to mind? What about how loose or tight your clothing is? I was like, if you're wearing something a little bit looser, a little bit baggier, you know, maybe something that's going to give you just a little bit more wiggle room throughout the day, that's going to make you a lot more comfortable. And of course, something else too when it comes to smart clothing choices, if you're really kind of an outdoorsy person where you are spending a lot of time out there, they do have clothing now that is UPF rated. So your clothing can actually is specifically designed to help block the sun. So if you or maybe someone you know is that outdoorsy person and is spending a lot of time, maybe they're training for you know, the Havsy later on this year or something like that, that could be something to consider investing in as an extra layer of protection. All right, so raise your hand. Oh, yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So my son is almost 5 months old, and so I know you're not supposed to use sunscreen until they're 6 months, but we're probably going to be outside all day on the 4th. And I also don't want them to get overheated. So what would you do?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I'd probably go to your child's doctor and ask them for a medical recommendation. I unfortunately don't have a background with infants, so that's not going to be my area of expertise to advise you. So I would specifically advise you to check directly with your doctor on what is the best way to protect them. At the end of the day, my educated guess is going to be that you're probably just going to have to just minimize the actual overall sun exposure by keeping them in an indoor or shaded area very carefully, and again also watching out for any signs that your child is getting overheated. My kids get overheated in the blink of an instant. I know that for a fact. We were just getting my friend's 2-year-old. We had just celebrated the birthday, and we were getting her tucked back into her car seat. And as we were just even standing there quickly wrapping up our plans, I looked over and noticed her cheeks had become slightly flushed, and I said, hey, let's get the car on ASAP and make sure that we get this AC cranking, because I feel like she might be overheating a little bit. So your doctor, especially for a 5-year-old, is going to have the best recommendations.
Sarah, you'll need to spend it inside.
Well, and again, inside and shade. So a lot of the times you can find maybe either it's a pavilion or a tent or something like that. If it's really, part of that is even just focused on reducing the actual sunlight that is hitting your child. And then from there, mitigating that heat risk after that. So it's going to be kind of a dual approach, I'm sure. Great question, though. Thank you for asking. For pet safety, raise your hands. Have you seen one of those videos online about either a human or anyone else providing a demonstration of what happens in cars in the summer once we close them up? Has anyone seen any of those videos going around? Yep, a couple, maybe? All right, so, this definitely can apply to pet safety, but at the end of the day, it's really just thinking, again, about what did you leave in your car. I know this is also going to be a huge thing, just talking about babies and infants as well. It's going to be really important to understand what happens in your car over the summer when you close and lock those doors and leave it. So essentially, your car is going to heat up at an exponential rate. It won't take very long on any summer days that we have right now for your car to reach 160 degrees. I actually used to go to school down in Tucson, Arizona in Phoenix. We always kind of joked around a little bit how things would melt. Right now in Phoenix, things actually are literally melting. Mailboxes are bending over, people are now baking cookies on their dashboard. They've gone above and beyond scrambling the egg on the sidewalk. They're cooking and baking cookies on their dashboards in their cars because the heat is getting that high, and it really truly does get that hot. So right now we are, I think, a little bit cooler from where we usually might hit some of our temperatures at. So on a 90-degree day, and that's maybe just right about to where we're going to probably be averaging, I think, tomorrow and a little bit over the next couple of days. Again, your car is going to get up to 160 degrees in less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes. So if you think about a quick errand where maybe you've got your fur friend hanging out in the back, you're about to go somewhere, and you just need to run in and get some chips and some ice. 10 minutes. And it's really just not worth the risk because there are a lot of good Samaritans out and about right now. This information is becoming very prevalent in our communities. I would not be surprised if there are going to be folks who will go to the length of trying to access your car, potentially break a window if they see a dog that is left in there with no keys. So that is definitely becoming more and more prevalent. It's something to be aware of. And at the end of the day, it's just really important to know how hot it gets and how quickly it gets. So same thing for kids. There's a lot of different prevention devices that are coming out into the market to try and help folks remember, hey, yeah, you do have your kid in the car seat in the back, and try and help you remember not to forget them, even if it's just a quick, I'm just running into the bank, or I'm just running back into the house because I forgot something. So you never really know what you're going to then encounter once you step out of that car. So a lot of the times, always err on the side of caution for your fur friends and also for your children. For pet safety as well, a couple of other things to think about, and this could even maybe go for your kids when they're running around outside on the asphalt. My parents used to kick us out a lot and just say, hey, go play all day. I don't want to see, come home when the street lights go on. That's how my parents used to do that. But you also need to be very aware with hot pavement. And that goes for, again, dogs and kids not wearing shoes running around. So again, we're averaging almost around a 90-degree day right now. And that means that the asphalt temps are going to be at 140. 140. And especially so with your pet's paws hitting that, or even your kid's bare feet hitting that, you can start to see burns with even just 60 seconds of straight contact onto some of that. So again, just be aware of where you're letting your dog walk. Is there are you taking your dog on a trail where they can easily just spot off onto the grass for a little bit and get a break? Are you making sure to try and walk them again during those early morning hours or the late evening hours so that their paws aren't hitting that hot temperature? And again, making sure that your kids, know to maybe just slip on some tennis shoes, have some easy slip-ons for them to hit on, even if they're just kind of going to go run around for a little bit, because it can definitely help protect their feet. So road trips. How many of you either maybe have already gone on one or will be going on one within the next couple of months? Traveling around, got a couple of folks with a few things planned? Perfect. Well, this is maybe going to apply for a couple of different folks here, but every now and again, you need to make sure you check if you maybe don't have a super nice newer vehicle available. I knew I drove my car from 1990 until just about a year or two ago, and it was not always in fighting condition for road trips. So, always just be smart and think about what kind of car you have and know the limits of your car. Again, common sense, but don't try and push it too far because you never really know what can happen if you're going on a longer drive, especially in high heat. So if you're ever really not quite sure, or maybe you kind of had been hearing some noises, but you're pretty sure it's fine, you've been getting to and from work okay, take it in for that inspection before you go on a long road trip. Again, especially in the summer, it's very, there are a lot of different variables that can increase your risk when you are caught at the side of the road on a longer road trip in the middle of the summer than there are at other times of the year. So of course, check it, get a rental car, take it into your mechanic, get it checked through. I'm also going to be showing you a quick little video here as well about making sure you know how to do a proper vehicle inspection. So that way, even if you're just driving up to Omaha, you have some great pointers to look at and things to be aware of as you're getting into your car. Of course, bring in sunshades for parking. My coworker Scott has some really cool Star Wars ones. So they came, but then they do seem a little old school, but they do help reduce the temperature a little bit. Obviously, not to the point where you'd want to keep anyone or anything in there, but they do make it a little bit easier for that AC to roll back over once you're back in your vehicle. So that's always something to consider. Making sure the AC works. I know some people are willing to rough it, and kudos to you, but again, if you're going on that longer road trip, you never know when you or another one of your passengers might really be relying on the comfort of some of that air conditioning. So make sure that's working, and always stash plenty of extra bottles of water. I have probably at least 6 to 8 stashed in my car at any given time, along with a couple of other additional gallons of water that I use when I'm out camping and going on those types of trips. So I really do stock up on that and make sure I have plenty for myself and anyone else that I might have in my vehicle. So real fast, I'm going to let my coworker Mark talk to you a little bit about a vehicle inspection. Hopefully.
Oh, maybe.
Uh-oh, maybe? There we go.
Yeah, just
Was it maybe? Uh-oh.
just do yes again. It might work.
And, oh, golly.
So when we first approach the vehicle, we want to get an overall appearance of the vehicle. Has there been any damage since the last time we've seen the vehicle? Are there any dents, or has there been any damage to the bumpers or the exterior of the vehicle? Next, we want to take a look at the windshield and the windows. And are there any cracks or dings or damage that's been occurring to those since we last drove the vehicle? Followed by that, we'll do our walk around. We're looking for any puddling, any leaks, any hoses, or anything that's hanging out from below the vehicle. On the tires, there's a couple of things we want to look for. First of all, we want to look for the inflation of the tire. And we can use a tire gauge and make sure that the specs on the door panel match with what we're seeing on the tire gauge. We want to check the condition of the tire. Is there any tears, rips, or bulges on the tire? And the tread of the tire. Is it worn evenly? And using a tire gauge, can you measure the tread to make sure that it's more than 2/32 of an inch? We also want to measure the valve stem. Is it worn? Is it broken? Is it cracking? And is there a cap on the valve stem? And then the rims of the tires, are there any cracks, breaking, any illegal welds on the rim? Also double check the lug nuts. Are the lug nuts all tight and in place? We're not missing any lug nuts. We'll then continue around to the back of the vehicle, and using our fob, we can double check that the rear lights are working. We want to check the glass on here, that there's no discoloration, no cracks or breaks on the glass on both sides of the rear of the vehicle. And then come over to the gas cap. Does it secure, does it lock and secure tightly? And we can look down below there and make sure there's no leaking or puddling of gas. And then that concludes the exterior of the pre-trip inspection on a non-commercial motor vehicle. So now we move to the interior of a pre-trip inspection on a non-commercial motor vehicle. I've entered the vehicle, I open the door. We want to check the hinges for any damage, any missing bolts or bushings, or any loose parts. We also want to check the insulation that goes all around the door, and do we get a complete seal on the door. Then I'll reach and grab my seat belt, and is it securely mounted to the vehicle itself? Are there any rips, frays, or tears in the belt itself? And then when I latch the belt, does it latch securely right here? I'm now looking at my windshields and my mirrors. Are my windshield and windows on the vehicle, are they cracked? Are there any stickers or obstructions that would hinder my view? We also want to make sure that all 3 mirrors are adjusted for us to minimize any blind spots that we have with our vehicle. Next, we're going to turn our vehicle on, and we're going to look at the lights as they come on. Do the warning lights come on and then turn off, which is an indication that the operations are actually safe? Are the gauges, do the gauges build to normal? Now in this vehicle we only have an RPM and a fuel gauge and the heat and the temperature gauge. In other vehicles we might have an oil gauge that also comes up to normal. Then we want to check our lights. Do our headlights come on? There's a headlight indicator there. And does our bright light come on when we do our high beams? Do our right and left blinkers work? And so we'll test those. Do our 4-way blinkers work? And we'll check with that. Now sometimes it's helpful to do a pre-trip with somebody else, and you can actually have the other person do a walk around and make sure that your brake lights are working evenly on both sides. We want to check our horn and make sure that's safe. We also want to check our defrost and put that on high and make sure that that's working, and that our heater and our air conditioning, and we wave down below and ensure that that's working. One other thing we want to check is our windshield wipers and our windshield washer fluid and ensure that that's working. Then we can check and make sure that we have our insurance card and our registration. And you can check your vehicle, whether you store a first aid kit here or in the trunk or in the rear seat. We can check those things. There are also a couple of brake checks that we want to do. We want to put our foot on the brake, and you should feel some resistance with that. You don't want to be able to push all the way down to the floorboard. And then 2 other checks that we want to do is we want to engage our emergency brake, put this in drive, and we're just gently going to just test it. And in our vehicle just now, we didn't even move. You don't want to floor it. You just want to just test it a little bit to ensure that that is in fact holding. Our last brake check is to let go of that and leave this in drive. And we're going to pull forward just a couple miles an hour. And engage the brake and ensure that we don't hear any squeaking, any rubbing, any grinding, and that it does in fact stop us. And that concludes our in-vehicle inspection on a non-commercial motor vehicle. You can find out more information on our website with a pre-trip inspection form as well.
So, pretty extensive check-through list for your cars. Probably no one's really gone that far before, but were there a couple of items in that video that you said, I've never thought to check that before? And hopefully that's just that's the point of why we come out and do these talks, and we just want to get you guys thinking about getting a couple of extra points checked and doing some of those checks, especially again as you're going out on longer trips. So finally, again, we've kind of talked about a couple of these things, but it's really just coming down to planning smart. Again, identifying those cooler temperature times, listening and paying attention to heat warnings. I know a lot of folks that think a heat warning is a challenge, to whether it's again for, well, I can handle that. It's not a problem. I can still get the lawn done, or I can go do this, or I can get this run in, whatever that might be. they consider that a challenge. And I would say listen to those heat warnings when they do come through. They are intended for a reason. They are especially intended for when you have children or elderly individuals that you interact with, whether it's some grandparents that maybe you're visiting for the weekend, or that you just kind of maybe touch base with throughout the week. That's a really important thing to keep in mind, is that when you see some of those heat warnings pop up, make sure that you're touching base with those individuals as well, and making sure that they're taking care of themselves and aware of what's going on and how they can do some smart planning on their own to kind of try and beat the heat when that comes up. Of course, making sure that you're thinking ahead for some of those big events. You're planning for these big events when they're coming up. If you're doing it the night before, you might already kind of be a little bit out of luck. So when you're starting to think of making sure that you're ready for a big trip, again, whatever those might be, going out to the lake, camping, picnics, you want to start thinking about, am I getting hydrated? Am I getting a good night's rest? Before you're going out into those situations, because those extreme heat scenarios are really going to affect your body quite a bit differently than it normally would. So again, just start to think ahead. If you have those trips coming up, make sure that you're taking it easy a couple of days before. Make sure that you're hydrating smart and getting those things tucked away. Whether it's making sure you have that right SPF in your bag, prepping for anyone else that might be in your family. So again, it's really coming down to just planning smart. So again, we covered quite a bit of information. Hopefully we just right at the right time for this. But again, a lot of all the information we covered, a lot of this was stuff you've probably heard many times before. I just really hope it was a great refresher as we're going into this holiday weekend, and that there were at least one or two items that you wouldn't have thought of before that you can take home and you can share with other people throughout the weekend to stay safe. So thanks for letting me come and enjoy and present to you guys this afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity. Did you guys have any other questions that I might be able to either try and answer now, or perhaps direct you to some resources somehow?
Yeah, I have a question. So, you were talking about the SPF and like the difference between 15 or like 100 or what. Do you have like a recommendation of what should be used? Because there's such a variety.
Yeah, I was gonna say, honestly, unfortunately, I can direct you guys and send Carly some resources on that to give you some more information and allow you to educate yourself on that. I personally am not gonna be able to I was like, there's no way I could really necessarily myself personally make a recommendation to you, but what I can do is get you some resources so you can learn a little bit more about those details. And so that way you can say, okay, yes, this applies to me. No, this doesn't. Yes, this does. Now I know what I need to look for. Absolutely, we can get that information to you. Yeah.
So it's specific per person, like maybe if I'm lighter skinned or if I'm
There are countless factors,
Okay.
and so I'm maybe just using myself as an example. When I am outside, I'm kayaking, I'm riding my bike, I'm doing and I'm also swapping in and out of all sorts of different environments. I'm sweating, I might be changing clothes. Who knows what's else going on? Maybe I'm taking a quick dip in the water. So I have a lot of considerations and risk factors to think about. So for me, it's not just about getting something that might be, and I say sweat-proof, but sweat-proof or water-resistant. I also need to think about how often I'm reapplying it. So it's not even just about getting the right sunscreen, but knowing how to use it. So it really is. And again, going back to the medications that we talked about, am I a little bit more sensitive to sunlight than someone else? There are so many factors that can go into that I won't be able to necessarily know right off the bat. But again, I think we can definitely get you guys thinking about the right questions to be asking yourself, or to asking, whether it's maybe also for your kids or other family members, what's going to be what's going to be the best fit for them. But at the end of the day, it's also really going to be important to keep an eye on each other. I can't tell you how many times I have gone on a family vacation and I look over and I look at my brother's neck and I say, JC, that's my brother's nickname. I say, JC, you need to get a handkerchief on. We need to get some sunscreen on it, and you need to get that covered. And my dad will, flop his hat over to my brother, and we'll make sure that my brother gets his neck covered for the rest of the day. So part of it too is watching out for each other. If you see someone getting red, feeling a little tired of anything else like that, make a nice adjustment. Say, here, I've got some water for it, not a problem. Hey, when's the last time you put on some sunscreen? Or hey, did you make sure you got a little bit of bug spray before you started running through the woods? So things like that can make a pretty big difference. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it, and everyone have a very happy and safe